Standing. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Eternal and gracious God, we gather this afternoon in your name for the greater glory of your name. As we gather here this afternoon, we ask you, Lord, to grant us the graces that we need at this particular time. As we enter into these discussions, may whatever that shall be said here, especially matters women, I pray, Father, that you may guide us, guide the facilitators of the day, and as we live here and go back to our communities, to the society, we may proclaim the good news, the news that will promote peace, love, and unity in our country, the news that will bring positive development. And for all those who have made this day for us to be here, we ask you, Lord, that you may bless them. We make all these prayers through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
My name is Dr. Mariam Kamunyu. I am a lawyer and lecturer here within the Faculty of Law within this university. My task here today is to set the agenda, to set the climate, as our agenda says. And so to do that, I will begin by situating us. I will do that by situating us physically, as well as figuratively. Well, physically, you find yourself within the Pope Paul VI Learning Resource Center. This auditorium, apart from its acclaimed innovativeness, I'm sure you noticed when you stepped out and walked in, it's very cool in here. It has been acclaimed as being an environmentally friendly building. But apart from that, this green building also has a place in our democratic history. Presidential debates have been held here. This is not the first time we're meeting here to discuss matters women's rights. Just the other day we had an International Women's Day. So the university is quite an enabling environment in terms of advancing women's representation and women's place in leadership. So today in particular, we want to talk about the case of the not more than 2/3 rule of gender representation. And so to situate us figuratively, I wanted to begin by just taking a brief look at history. So we have this rule that finds itself in our constitution, the not more than 2/3 principle. And what is the essence of this rule? It is a rule of representation. And the basic rule of representation, if you sit in any democracy class, they will tell you that representation is essentially your representative must look like you. So that is a simple formula. If you want to see, is this government representative? Is this parliament representative? Is this body representative? Essentially, your representative must look like you. So ideally, if an alien, if there's life in Mars and we have an alien that has visited this planet and they visit our National Assembly, they should come away with a clear picture of what Kenyans look like. So it means if in your population there's men, they should see men in that parliament. If there's women, they should see women in that parliament. Are there persons with disabilities in this community? They should see them in that parliament. Are all people old, or are they young ones as well? So you get the picture. And I'm sure you would agree that if you walked into our parliament to date, you would not get the true face of Kenya. And so we are failing in that representation equation. And the reason why your representative must look like you, it's not merely surface, that just so that we can tick a box. But it is really because it is only the person that looks like you that can be able to understand how you live, that can be able to understand your lived realities, and therefore advance those lived realities when it comes to policy making, when it comes to legislation, and so on and so forth. I'm sure if I asked, and in fact I will ask by a show of hands, if there was a conference in New York today, all expenses paid, business class, you will stay in the Fifth Avenue, and the topic there is life as an, let me try to see which demographic we don't have in here, life as an American male. Who feels confident? Who would go and represent, who would be confident to go and speak about life as an American male? Any hand? No, right? So it's obvious, right? It's obvious that you would not be able to, you would not be confident, you would not go to speak on this because that is not your lived reality. Yet this is something that we take for granted. This is something that men in particular take for granted. They represent us, they speak for us, yet they know nothing of our lived realities. And so that is the issue. And even if you did not believe me, Dr. Kamunyu, some of you are my teachers, beyond believing me, this is also a matter of law, right? So it's a matter of values, our values as a country. As a country, we have decided that there are some principles that we hold quite dear. So if you look at your constitution, if you look, for instance, at Article 10 of our Constitution, where we set out our values as a people, we have decided that gender equality is one of our core organizing values. Democracy, rule of law, patriotism, so we have integrity. All these things are issues we can't say integrity is dispensable. We can't say patriotism is dispensable. We can't say rule of law is dispensable. In the same way, we cannot say that gender equality is dispensable. Our constitution goes on beyond this overall spirit of gender equality to say in very precise ways. If you look at Article 27, and forgive me for reading these provisions because I know that there are students in audience as well. Article 27, an express requirement that there must be representation of all genders. That's why the not more than 2/3 principle, you will find it there. You will also find it in Article 81, which is quite important because we say in our country we have an electoral system. Our electoral system has various principles. And one of those principles is free and fair elections. I'm sure everyone here would agree this is an indispensable principle. We can't say, no, free and fair elections are too expensive. They are too inconvenient. We would never make that case. In the same way, that same Article 81 also says that gender representation is one of the foundational pillars of our electoral system. It is not dispensable, right? And so that is why we are here today. Article 100, as well as a number of judgments, a number of constitutional officers have also stood before us. Two former Chief Justices have stood before us and told us the implementation of this rule is not a matter of prerogative, but it is indeed mandatory. Our discussion today is backed by a rich history. We have had the women's rights movement represented here. I see very many people. I see Fida represented, I see Crew represented, I see Crown represented, Mzalendo Trust, many others who have worked tirelessly for over 12 years now. I actually applaud them. Over 12 years talking about the same thing, many efforts done, and thankfully it's no longer a rallying call only from the women's rights movement. We now see support from the judiciary. Like I said, 2 heads of judiciary have been in support of this. We now see the electoral body itself has finally caught up, issuing directives saying that indeed even political parties have no choice. The media has caught up. It's not like 10 years ago when we had to bribe and cajole media people to even talk about the not more than 2/3. We bribe them with breakfast, by the way. Well, bribe is the wrong word, but we incentivize them with the breakfast and whatnot, but now we see them willingly talking about these issues. So all to say that we are making some headway, and today's dialogue is part of that knock. We know that it takes many steps for people to eventually succeed. And so today is one of such efforts. So this is our little effort as Catholic University, as Federation of Women Lawyers Kenya, as Mzalendo Trust to ensure that there's momentum, particularly at this critical juncture. We are now at a very critical juncture in our history. Yet again, we are being tested. We have failed this test several times. We're now going to be tested again in terms of our fidelity to our Constitution, our fidelity to the law, and our fidelity to humanity, because indeed women make up 50%. We hold up half of the sky since we make up 50% of our population. And so that is, in a sense, is to sort of paint the backdrop of what brings us here and where we have come from, and the tone of the discussions today will continue to take a similar trajectory. And so what I would want us to now get into is to have the opening remarks. As we hold this forum today, we have the blessings of our Rector Vice Chancellor, the very Reverend Professor Stephen Mbogwa-Ngare. We have the blessings of our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Research, Mrs. Professor Rachel Jesami, and they have handed the torch to my Lady Dean, a woman I like to call Boss Lady. They have handed the torch to my Lady Dean, Jerry Kang'ethe, to come and open this floor for us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I think we can say. Distinguished guests, sponsors of this event, both from Fida Kenya and Mzalendo Trust, our other supporters, the panelists, colleagues, and students. Allow me to first of all bring greetings and apologies from our Rector and Vice Chancellor, the very Reverend Professor Stephen Mbogwa-Ngare, and our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs and Research, Mrs. Professor Rachel Jesami. They would have loved to be here because they hold this function in the highest regard, and to participate meaningfully, but due to exigencies of work, they could not. I can let you in on the secret that the university's top governing body, the University Council, is here, and so the timing wasn't quite right, and they really do send their apologies. On their behalf and on behalf of the entire choir family, I welcome you all to this auspicious occasion. I cannot begin to tell you what a great privilege and honor it is for choir to have been chosen to co-host this event. As we thank the organizers for this convening, we do hope that the reasoning behind making choir an avenue of choice is not informed only by our geographical positioning and our state-of-the-art facilities, which is not a bad thing at all, but rather that this choice is symbolic and was made in acknowledgement and recognition of who choir is, what she stands for, what role she plays in matters justice, because choir does not only subscribe to the Catholic philosophy of higher learning, but she walks the talk. In our teaching, research, and community service, we ask the hard questions and demand answers. We speak truth to power and assume responsibility for any consequences. We are an institution of higher learning that breaks new frontiers in order to deliver value-based and value-adding higher education. Choir is a regional institution of higher learning that boasts the oldest private law school in the country, and perhaps that's why the majority of the faculty here will be lawyers. The law school's niche area is regional integration, cooperation, and development law. Although of necessity we lay emphasis on the traditional bread and butter law courses, we break boundaries in crafting our courses in a manner that offers progressive, life-giving, value-adding curricula geared to making all-rounded lawyers who have used the communities which they serve. Fortunately for us, we are able to extend our horizon and to do this effectively because Queer boasts institutes and centers which are formidable buttress for this philosophy. We have with us the Institute of Ethics and Social Justice, the Institute of Canon Law, and the Institute for Regional Integration and Development, our key collaborators in delivering an education that adds value to the community, especially in social justice. Evidence of our work is manifest here today in our students, most of who are already seasoned justice workers under the banner Law and Justice Initiative, LAJI, the Queer Law Firm, and Wakili wa Watoto Club. The university students' body, KUASO, whose president is a young woman, Jerry, are you in the audience? Is also represented here. So when we talk about fighting for these spaces, Daisy and Company Women Business, our president, KUASO student leader president is a lady. Now, Queer aspires to train, form, and role model transformative, God-fearing leaders for church and society in the region. I think that we benchmark against the person, image, life, and example of the great teacher, the just judge, and the compassionate advocate, Jesus Christ. Issues of justice, and particularly access to justice for all in the region, are therefore critical for us. The national dialogue on the two-third gender rule and its impact on representation, inclusivity, equity, and equality for women could therefore not have found a better home or platform from which to amplify their voices as they begin this important discourse and conversation that hopefully will shape our nation's affairs before, during, and after the general elections. So we wish you all a most engaging and rewarding dialogue. And now, on behalf of our Rector and Vice Chancellor, I now declare this national dialogue formally open. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause to the Lady Dean. Great. Now, as I mentioned, we are co-convening this forum with our partners. And so now we'll hear from one of them. We'll hear from Ms. Wanjiro Kamanda, who is the Deputy Executive Director and Head of Programs at the Federation of Women Lawyers Kenya. I see Ms. Mogeni rising instead, who is a council member for the Federation of Women Lawyers. Let's welcome her kindly.
Of the Vice Chancellor, the Dean, Madam Jerry Kangethe, Directors of non-governmental organization present here, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening once again. My name is Shiro Mogeni. I'm from Fida Kenya, Federation of Women Lawyers. I'm the board member. I'm here on behalf of the institution, but also key partners in this process. And our agenda purely is to ensure that women are well represented in elective and appointive positions. So for those who are with us and have not engaged with Fida Kenya, we are non-governmental in nature. And our main mandate is to advocate for women's rights. And of course, we don't walk the journey with women alone as much as we are known to be advocates of women's rights. We work also with men, young women and young men, to ensure that we promote women's rights and advocate for the respect of women's rights in Kenya. So we are here as one of the key partners, and I'm going to make a speech on behalf of our chairperson, Madam Nancy Kangethe. We, of course, present our appreciation for your representation and participation in this national dialogue this afternoon. And we have convened today basically to discuss the elusive discussions that involve in implementation of the two-thirds gender principle. We know very well that our constitution was passed in 2010. It's been a journey, a war that we've fought in the courts of law, a war that we've fought on the streets. We have moved all institutions, we have knocked all constitutional offices, parliament, but we are still talking about the same issue. It's one of the global commitments that Kenya has made. When you look at implementation of Sustainable Development, SDG 5, we look at institutional strengthening, which is SDG 16, and our government has made global commitments towards representation and participation of women in all spheres, including political. But now what we are seeing is an elusive discussion. We're not finding solutions from the institutions that are mandated to give us solutions, institutions that are mandated to open the door for women to be represented in both appointive and elective positions. So as Fida Kenya, we've moved a step forward and say that it's beyond discussions. We have now created an academy. It's called the Women Leadership Academy, where we've trained 35 aspirants. And we believe by building their capacities, training the understanding of the Constitution and the reasons why we need their representation in Parliament and different political spaces, we'll be having women elected naturally into these positions. In addition to that, we have also strengthened the capacity of advocates in collaboration with the Law Society of Kenya to be able to be available to offer legal aid, free legal aid services to our candidates, our aspirants, because you know this is not an easy journey. We've already seen and experienced some tension with the nomination processes, so we are preparing for any petitions that will come through within the election cycle. In addition to that, we continue to convene, led by other civil society organizations, women rights institutions, to be able to sustain the discussion, to sustain regional and global advocacy in support of women being appointed into political positions. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are now convinced that matters concerning women are more often than not given lip service or relegated to the back burner with the assumption that there is no urgency and can be achieved progressively. We refer back to the judiciary, the jurisprudence that we're getting on this matter, that more not refers to progressive realization of two-thirds gender principle. And that is why it is our call this afternoon to have tangible actions, to have tangible results that is far and beyond litigation, to be able to see the two-thirds gender principle implemented in Kenya. Our rally call today is, as usual, we stand and advocate for Vote Adada, all initiatives, all processes, all programs that are geared towards moving deliberate actions to vote for Adada. This is our call this evening, and we're asking all stakeholders to continue engaging, all civil society organizations, students who are here, youth, please advocate for the call for Adada to be voted into Parliament and all other political spaces. We thank all the partners that have joined us this evening for this occasion, and wish you all the best. We'll be on board to hear all the discussions and action points that come from the panel discussion. Otherwise, greetings from Fida Kenya, and we'll be together this evening. Thank you.
Many thanks. Mogeni. A fun fact that I can share is that Miss Mogeni used to be my boss a few years ago. She was a very strict boss when I worked at the Federation of Women Lawyers. And thank you, Fida, for the work that you have continued to do over the years on this issue of the not more than two-thirds principle. We would now like to hear from our other partner, Mzalendo Trust. And speaking on behalf of Mzalendo Trust is Ms. Sylvia Katua. Let's kindly welcome her.
Chancellor, the Dean School of Law, partners, and all protocol observed, good afternoon. My role here is very simple, just to explain what Mzalendo does in relation to women representation in promoting the rights of women, and to also thank you for making time to be here today. Maybe I should start by first asking how many know of Mzalendo Trust? other than our partners? That was a simple one. How many know of Mzalendo Trust? I can see my good friend Becky in the crowd. Hi. So Mzalendo Trust is a Kenyan non-partisan organization, parliamentary monitoring organization whose mission is to promote open, inclusive, and accountable parliaments, not only in Kenya, but across Africa. So in line with our strategic plan, which we launched last year, our 3 pillars are openness, inclusion, and accountability. And we believe that success in our work will build more effective and responsive legislation and political processes. So under the inclusion aspect of our work, we, together with support from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Kingdom of Netherlands, through the Netherlands Institute of Multi-Party Democracy, Mzalendo is implementing the Power of Dialogue program. And under this program, under Outcome Area 2, we seek to ensure that aspiring and elected young and women are influential actors of change within civil society organizations targeting youth and women, political party leagues, parliament, and county assemblies. And this was born from the realization that inclusion in political processes is a critical component in promoting equality and the voices of the marginalized in Kenya. And so we do this by working with youth, women, persons with disabilities, and young women. Why we specifically cordon off young women is because we realize that young women themselves are a marginalized community, seeing as they fall under both youth and women, and so they're in the middle. So the kind of interventions they need are a bit more different from just the general interventions for youth and women. And so the kind of interventions we do relate to movement building. So we try to create relationship and movement building among youth in political party leagues and in civil society organizations targeting youth and women, and in parliament at the national level and at county assemblies. We also focus leveraging on our work on civic technology. We use democracy innovation tools to enhance public participation, especially the participation of youth and women who are not able to access parliament in an easy and accessible manner. We also continuously sensitize political parties on youth and women political participation through capacity building, peer learning, and intergenerational mentoring. So these are some of the things that we do, and in light of all that, just to build up on all that, we also conduct research and publish publications almost every year, touching on the representation of youth and women. And on women, we have done research on the participation of women in Kenya's 11th and 12th parliament. And the numbers are mind-boggling. I mean, in 2017, just alone, only 21% of the aspirants were women. And in 2017, in the new parliament, only 6.3% are youth. What does that tell you? There's a lot that needs to be done. And the 2/3 gender rule under Article 27, which Dr. A has mentioned here, is a good way to start it. And while we say the realization of this right is progressive, we believe that time is moving, you know? The Constitution was inaugurated in 2010, and almost 12 years later, we do not see a lot of this progress, or the milestones we would have wanted to achieve, we have not yet reached them. So we hope that today's engagement would be the first of many, or a continuation of the many that have already happened, in trying to encourage duty bearers to take up their duties, to ensure that women have a place at the table. And in light of the recent court decision, which I think was just 2 days ago, then it's for us to strategize creatively and think forward on what we can be able to do, not just as civil society partners, but as academia, duty bearers, government agencies, to be able to find a way forward. In all this, we can also not forget the role of the cost of politics. Cost of politics has been a huge factor affecting the representation of women in parliament because they're not able to participate. You find that women bear the huge brunt of the high cost of politics because they have unique needs, if I can say, that affect their cost. For example, they need they need funds for image consultancy services, or even to hire extra security personnel because of the kind of personal violence they face during campaign periods. And so Mzalendo has done work around this, trying to creatively find solutions on how women can be able to navigate the high cost of politics in this country, and so that we can be able to encourage their participation in political processes. So today, even as we have this conversation, we hope that you may keep your minds open, that we may brainstorm together, if I may say, in trying to find our way forward, in trying to encourage more women to take up seats, not only in elective positions, but nominative positions, and so that all the recommendations that come out of this discussion, the output from this, will be able to encourage state agencies to fulfill their mandates. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful session.
Ms. Katua, and thank you so much, Mzalendo Trust, for the work that you continue to do. One of the things I love about the work of Mzalendo is that, you know, one of the rhetorics you hear when we are advocating for women's representation is that they ask, what have these women leaders done? Now, Mzalendo can not only tell you what the women have done, which is a lot, but they'll also tell you that that male parliamentarian who is asking what have women done has not spoken in parliament for around 3 or 5 years. So kudos for the work that you continue to do. And so without further ado, I will now actually welcome the Executive Director of Mzalendo Trust, Ms. Caroline Gaita, who is our moderator today for our main panel discussion. So please come to stage. Please come with your speakers as well. Professor Mary Getui, our very own here from the Catholic University, Ms. Daisy Amdani, the Executive Director of Crown Trust, and also the leader of the National Women's Steering Committee. And hopefully joining us virtually is Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi, who is the aspiring senator for Nyeri County. And last but not least, my Lady Dean, Ms. Njeri Kang'ethe, our acting Dean at the School of Law. Karibu, Ms. Gaita.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mariam, and thank you, Sylvia, for that very apt description of the work that we are doing. I was hoping that I would get an opportunity to welcome my panelists with more applause by first telling you who they are, but I'll still do that. So once again, good afternoon. So my name is Caroline, as has been indicated, and I'm here to guide the panel conversation, the crux of this afternoon's meeting, and perhaps just taking us back, and I know Dr. Mariam did a very good introduction of the journey that has brought us here, but perhaps this week is what you could say, what a week. As Jeff would say, we could say, what a week it has been. We've seen the political party nominations come to a conclusion last week. Then we saw the directive from IEBC requiring that all political parties comply with the 2/3 requirement. And in fact, in that regard, they even issued a statement where they said some 46 parties, 43 to 46 parties, had not complied. And we also saw yesterday, the court decision to suspend that requirement, that the 2/3 requirement is not a necessity, and parties cannot be held accountable for those lists. And obviously, the other thing that is on everyone's mind is, will we have a deputy president from our agenda? Those are some of the things that we are discussing this week in relation to women's leadership, and asking ourselves, are we there yet? And if we are not, what are the handles? What are the impediments? 12 years is a long time to be having the same conversation. And to join us on this very interesting panel, as has been indicated, I have a very rich, experienced, and with a wealth of experience. So my first panelist, not in the order that they'll speak, but in the order of introductions, I have Professor Mary N. Getui from the Department of Religious Studies of the Catholic University, And let me say also, I'm very honored to be here, Prof. I'm an alumni of this very university, and I stand here with so much pride. So Prof, let me just see. Yes, so Professor Mary Gitui from the Department of Religious Studies is one of our panelists. She's a professor, Department of Religious Studies at this university. Her research interests are in land, and publications are on religion, education, culture, gender, peace, and health. She served previously as the National AIDS Control Council of Kenya chairman, and we'll hear from her on the role of the church in this discourse. Our second panelist, again from Catholic University, Njeri Kang'ethe, the acting dean, the School of Law, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, certified professional mediator, certified investigator for gross violations of international humanitarian law, and currently the acting dean of the School of Law, Catholic University. Our third panelist, a face that's very familiar to most of us, Daisy Amdani, Executive Director of Crown Trust. It's a governance and development and women's rights. She's a governance, development, and women's rights enthusiast and practitioner with several years of experience. She also coordinates the National Women's Steering Committee, which is a platform that brings together individuals, organizations, and networks from county to national level on women's political and economic emancipation to harness their collective voice. She's a renowned activist of the two-thirds gender rule, her profile's words, and also she's a champion for good governance. Last but not least, we have a lady of strength, one of our greatest champions in and out of Parliament, Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi. Currently, she's aspiring to be a senator for Nyeri County. I'm not sure whether she's been able to log in online, Mumbi and Ida. Is she on? All right. So as we wait for her, she's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, currently serving as a commissioner at the National Gender and Equality Commission. She was the first Nyeri County women rep in the 11th Parliament, where she championed issues of women, law, development, and human rights. She was a proponent of the National Government Action, Affirmative Action Fund, and also the caucus of, the chair of the caucus 47 that brings together all the women reps. So she will generally speak on the challenges facing women in political parties. So as we wait for her, we can kickstart the conversation. Maybe, I'm not sure. Ida, how do we confirm if she's online? Is she? Okay. So then, as she joins us, we'll pick up the conversation from there. But perhaps just throwing the first questions to the panel, and I'll want to start with Dr. Njeri Kang'ethe. So we've had the constitutional and the legal frameworks on this issue. We've talked about a journey that's taken us 12 years. And the question is, why is it so hard to realize this journey? Is 2022 the year that we have some light, or is the court decision a setback that we may not be able to navigate through? And beyond the legal and constitutional frameworks, what do you think we need to do to unlock that impasse that we just can't seem to overcome in 12 years? Here's the mic. Okay. Is that better? It's not working.
Is this working? Oh, okay, thanks.
So in less than 5 minutes.
Oh. The first question was why it hasn't, but perhaps none of us has an answer. But we can hazard a guess that perhaps the tools we are using are not as effective as we would love them to be. And perhaps that opens another discussion that I'm hoping to hear from those who are actually in the trenches fighting for it. Maybe the legal systems that we're using, the laws that are in place, and even the way we go about agitating for this. But it's not a lost cause, it will pass.
Okay. And perhaps that, Daisy, just drawing up on that, it seems a journey of 2 steps forward, 2 it seems. And again, just reflecting on the same, what seemed like a light, at the end of the tunnel is now proving to be a train. Is it lost? Did we get knocked down yesterday? And in your view, and just reflecting on what Dr. Kanyede has said, what do you think civil society organizations and other partners need to do to take this forward?
Okay, so first of all, I think that we must not blame ourselves because it's not about us. This is an act of impunity. It's an act of lawlessness on the part of our leaders, and we need to call it what it is. Because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It is the governing covenant that we have between the duty bearers and us as citizens. And we are all bound by the Constitution. Now, the Constitution 2010 sought to do very many things. And among those things is to change the governance structure of our country and ensure that those who had been left out, because we had a system of exclusion, very exclusionary politics, and there were many marginalized groups, women, youth, persons with disability. And we see inclusion as a central pillar of our Constitution. Even devolution itself is an act of inclusion. We know that there are parts of this country where they call themselves Kenya B, simply because the government had neglected them and operated with a very light touch. And so devolution is seeking to address those things. The Equalization Fund is seeking to bring them up to scratch. It's an affirmative action measure. So our Constitution, in recognizing that we had a system of governance that did not serve the people, majority of the people, has put in place principles that ensure that everyone is brought on board. Now, one of those principles is that you cannot have more than 2/3 of the same gender in any elective or appointive public body. So this is not even about women, because women now are the marginalized groups, but tomorrow it could be men who need this mechanism, which is why it is framed the way it is. So the 2/3 is not about women. Now, because we have a culture of impunity in this country and a political class that really operates with, utmost lawlessness, because the courts have affirmed and reaffirmed the 2/3 gender principle, they have issued orders. Remember that even as we sit here, there is a dissolution order for Parliament to be dissolved for their failure to implement the 2/3 gender rule, okay? For their failure to enact the necessary legislation that will give life to the 2/3 gender principle. So in essence, we are dealing even with an illegal parliament, okay? We are dealing with a president who is steeped in lawlessness because the advisory was to him. The Constitution says that should Parliament fail to enact legislation within the time frame given by the court under Article 261, that then anyone can petition the courts for the dissolution of Parliament. And more than one person did. One of them is here, Marilyn Kamuru, LSK, and several people petitioned the court for the dissolution of Parliament, and the advisory was issued. Mr. President, dissolve Parliament, because Parliament has failed in its responsibility to enact the law. And please note that Article 100 is the one piece of legislation that has not been implemented 12 years post-promulgation. And that is the article that provides for Parliament to enact the necessary legislation for the full participation of women, youth, and persons with disability, and other marginalized groups and minority groups. So this is an act of continued exclusion, that there are those who feel that on issues of inclusivity, they are not bound by the law. So all Kenyans need to be outraged by this action. Many people look at it as an issue of women and not an issue of constitutionalism, that this is an act of impunity. And we keep saying, and we have been saying it for a long time, that if it is okay for them to exclude over half of the population, that is women, and if it is okay for them to not implement sections of the Constitution with regards to inclusion, then everything else is fair game. And if you look at many of the issues that we are grappling with under this administration, which is the first administration elected under the new Constitution, you will find that many of them find their root cause in impunity and a failure to implement, to just follow the Constitution, whether it is on public finance management, whether it is on public participation, borrowing, debt, debt management, all those things, they are rooted in the same action of impunity. The other thing is the low status of women. We complain that, we have very many issues that we are grappling with as women. Gender-based violence being one of the most critical issues that we have to face, and continued issues. I mean, today we still fight things like, child marriages and exclusion of the girl child, or girl child not being allowed to go to school. But all these are rooted in the status of women. So when the political class refused to implement legislation to support the inclusion of women, what they are communicating is that women don't matter, that women are not valuable in our society, that women, because Kenyans we are highly politicized society, and we find that Kenyans are very animated around politics, and many of the heroes are the politicians. So it's almost like communicating that women do not deserve that position. So it's also as symbolic of where the political class locate women, the status of women, within the hierarchy of importance. Women are not important. They're only good for organizing and mobilizing around the ballot, but beyond the ballot, they have no pride of place. So there is also, we need to also begin to ask about the values of our political class. So it's many things, but it is certainly not the fault of women or the fault of civil society. We've kept this thing alive since 2011.
Okay. Allow me to come back to you on that just in a short while. But you've brought up two key interesting issues, and I'll throw the question to Professor Getue on impunity and the disregard of law, and bringing on board the role of the church. So in the past, we have seen that every time, even now, every time the church adds her voice to the issues of national interest, some action is taken. There is impetus. Do you think that the church's voice on the issue of inclusion and the realization of the 2/3 gender rule has been loud enough, strong enough, and engaging enough? Has the church held the political class to account on this?
Thank you very much. I sit here very humbly because I'm not church, but I'm a member of the church. Today we are holding this function here. So I'll speak as myself. I'm a scholar of religious studies, so some of my issues that I teach will come in here. What I want to say is that the church is a very important institution. And in the church, most of the pews are filled by women. Right now, I'm involved in a project where we are looking at the role and participation of women in the church. And we are realizing, or we really don't need to realize, this is a given, that yes, they are the majority in many of the churches, but when it comes to issues of decision making, you find very few women. I also want to say that when the church speaks, we should listen. But with a lot of sensitivity, I say that the church ought to be heard when it has moral authority to do that. At the beginning, Mariam told us that representation is somebody who is like yourself. I want to look at it that it is very important that we discuss this issue and that it is implemented, because representation is not just image, but representation is also issues. When it comes to that table and decisions are going to be made, who is making this decision? Who understands the life of a mother? Who understands the life of women? Who understands the life of youth? Who understands what it is about disability? I remember a few years back I was doing a research on what is the church doing about people with a hearing impairment. And one of the people I talked to said, yes, you can do that, but we would like to have a voice where we speak for ourselves. But what I would also like to say is that what happens in the wider public space has got a lot of implications on what happens in the other institutions in the society. One of the things, the exercise I'm doing right now, a good example that is given is of Rwanda and the place the women are playing in the public sphere. Now, it has actually, one could say, is it osmosis, but this is also being felt at the church level. I also want to bring in the issue of African culture. A lot of times we say the women were marginalized. Yes and no. The value of their participation was that when all these men sat and were making decisions, sometimes they are not able to come to a consensus, or it is just not possible for them to discuss an issue. Then they'll say, we'll come back tomorrow and continue. They've gone and they have consulted. And in many of our communities as well, and I want to say this also on the aspect of age, that the older women were given special roles and special responsibilities. And so it is not something that is just out of nowhere. There is value to talk about inclusivity, and I think what my colleague has just said earlier, the issue of accountability. If this is what we are supposed to do, why don't we just go ahead and do it? Because we have a moral responsibility, we owe it to the people, and it should be done. Now, before I stop, I want, maybe it's outside, but I think it's very important. My teacher lives and works in the US. She's Kenyan. And one time she comes home, and it was just around election time. She talks to her elderly mother, and she tells her, Mama, I want to see your voter's card. And the mama said, no, I'm not going to give you because of civic education. Mama had been told that this is your right, and it is powerful. It is what you can use to make a decision. And the wisdom of this elderly mama, she told her, if you really just want to see a card, go to where they are issuing them, and you'll be able to see it. But this one is mine. You could be my daughter. You do very many things for me, but this one is my right. I think this is very powerful. Women have a role to play regardless of age, and a lot of times what we do is not just for ourselves, but it's for the good of the community. And a lot of times we are also guided by divine or spirituality. This morning I was somewhere else where we were talking about spirituality, that we don't owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I like that you've already touched on some of the issues that have been blamed so much for the lack of women participation, and that's culture and traditions. And now from what you're saying, that traditions were not necessarily an impediment to the lack of women at the decision-making tables, but we'll come to that. And for the plenary, please prepare your questions. We'll have, after this second set of questions, we'll allow you to give your comments, insights. I know we have some of the leadership from the other civil society organizations here that may be willing to also contribute to the conversation. Please prepare your comments and your questions. But allow me now to go back to the Dean, Njeri Kang'ethe. So creating a critical mass of women, if we want to be at the decision-making tables, we also need to be on the ballot, we need to be voting, we need to be making decisions. But how can the academia play this role in the context, especially in the context of young women? We've always talked about the intersectionality of youth, of gender, of the economy, of the socio-cultural issues, but is the academic space encouraging the participation of young people and especially of young women?
Okay, thank you, Carol. I need to maybe to lay a little background, especially in responding to some of some of Daisy's very passionate observations, and perhaps also remind you that talking about being in academia, I was in the trenches with the likes of Daisy, so yeah. I'm wearing many hats.
Please do, and maybe your mic. Can you hear her?
Can you hear me? Could be my voice actually. No, I think this is okay. Can you hear me?
Much better now.
And I have a loud voice anyway. But one of the things that I want to draw to the attention of this congregation is something that was said almost 10 years ago by Professor Maria Nzomo. You can see my gray hair, so you know we're a little closer to. And she was talking about the same debate that we're talking about today. And she said, if equality of rights and justice is to be achieved in elective politics, we cannot afford to rely on the existing legal guarantees for that equality. And that's a very profound statement. And other new laws and mechanisms must therefore be injected into our laws to level the playing ground and to directly increase the proportion of women in decision making. And herein lies my argument, and because I also need to put things into context, because this is a learning institution, that perhaps, and to answer your question, Carol, that we need a critical mass of women and young people generally, is to remember that as a teaching institution, we are the hand that rocks the cradle. And if you're going to make changes in the laws, if you're going to make changes in the thinking of young people and old people alike, if you're going to have a critical mass of people who know how to circumvent some of the existing laws, how to lobby for law reform, then we must be ready to teach. Our pedagogies and our pedagogies must be innovative and creative. And I'm very proud to belong to this Catholic university, because this is a place, because again of their Catholic identity, where knowledge, you have the liberty, the academic liberty to research, to work on anything. It has helped us a lot. First of all, even as we teach the bread and butter law courses, as we call them, to also infuse some of the tenets of social justice that perhaps are unknown to statutes, that most of which we borrowed from England. And I don't know how much time I have, Carol.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. Yes. No, then I won't delve into that. But we also have crafted models that give us a curricula that gives life. That we now have men and women who can question things and who also bring a little of their culture and their upbringing into this. Because, for instance, even when we talk about women leadership, and women in that space. Remember, because of the situation, because of the laws, because of the systems that are still in existence, it is, to use a biblical analogy, bringing new wine into old wineskins. And remember, Christ told us this cannot be sustained. And therefore, we must even be thinking of our revolutionary ways in order to upset the whole system, the whole legislative system, the whole judicial system. And we can do that by shaping minds that are capable of doing that. And we use a few more models of delivery that we share after somebody else has spoken.
Okay, excellent. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from you, young people, on what you think needs to happen, bearing in mind that when we are talking about the 2/3 male and female, not exclusive to the women. But allow me to now ask Daisy a conversation that has been in the elephant in the room in the last 2 weeks, and this is around the negotiated democracy and consensus, as we are calling it. If you looked at the papers, I think a couple of weeks ago, we've seen a lot of women with potential, have to either step down because of consensus or go for positions that are not necessarily what they wanted. And perhaps just to get your reflections on the process, is it a good, this negotiated democracy, is it a double-edged sword for the participation of women, or is it one sword that's just clearing all the good people to the wayside? And for those that are running for office and are in the audience, we'll also be seeking to hear from you in response to that question.
Okay, so first of all, negotiated democracy is an affront to democracy, okay? Because it is a few people gathered together, not necessarily representing the people, negotiating who will be the leader. It's an affront to political rights, Article 38 political rights, that everybody has the right and freedom to choose a person of their choice, but also to also freely be represented. Now, we have seen that the areas where negotiated democracy occurs is in those very patriarchal societies. And within those societies, women have no status. We know that even in some of those communities, when the women rep position came up, they were asking if a man can be the one to represent women. Because for them, the idea of a woman as a leader was anathema, because women are not seen as leaders, And that is why the law is important, because the law is a tool that can facilitate social change. For instance, if we did not have the 47 county women representatives, there are parts of this country where we would never have women elected ever, But by having them there, elected by universal suffrage, even just by their presence there, they are breaking those barriers. So where culture is saying women cannot be leaders, the law says women must be leaders and you must choose a woman to be your leader. And so they are seen there. And so the young women, the people are seeing, actually, here is a woman leader. Same thing with the Article 177B that requires, the nominations of the opposite gender to ensure not more than 2/3 of the same gender in the county assemblies. It is the same idea, so that even within those communities where you have that negotiated democracy, whether they like it or not, they're going to have to choose. That women are going to have to, ascend to those leadership positions. And of course, once you get there, and we have seen that from the women who have been nominated before, that many of them, after nomination, are able to build their political capital to get elected into public office. Because we must remember that there are many factors that have kept women behind. Not just the cultural and traditional practices, but those have fed into economic exclusion. And we already know, Sylvia told us, and Mzalendo, you have done the study of the cost of politics in this country. So for women and youth and persons with disabilities, it is prohibitive. So if you have a culture that has excluded you from inheriting land, factors of production, of owning, even handling money, and then suddenly the door is opened, there have to be affirmative action measures to help level that playing field. If we understand it within the context of devolution and the equalization fund, that's the same thing that we're doing with representation, where we have affirmative action measures, and those measures go beyond just the representative offices, but also measures, actions where we've seen like political parties waiving fees. You imagine as a young person, because I can see there are many young people here, whether male or female, you are aspiring to public office, and you're told for you to be an MP, nomination fees alone, you need to pay. And we're looking even at the lower cost, 50,000 shillings. Where are you going to get 50K from? You know, in terms of disposable money, beyond your daily survival, where are you going to get 50,000 shillings from? For some, it's as high as 250,000 shillings. And then to mount a campaign, even just visibility, because media and posters and everything, those help in the emergence, and visibility of a candidate. You're talking at least several million. Where are you going to get the money from? So there are several measures, programs that we have to ensure come into place. And those are the things that have not been happening. Political parties, listen, I looked it up. There's a political parties fund. I hope you know that taxpayers, of whom women are taxpayers, you know that women pay taxes in this country. We pay taxes. So taxpayers have actually funded political parties. In 2020, 236 million was shared between Jubilee and ODM, and the ODM parties, the cord parties. In 2021, this is last year, they got 519 million Kenya shillings. Political parties. Now, 30% of the money they receive is supposed to go towards activities that encourage the participation of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. So if political parties were even following the law regarding the regulation of the parties, we would not have this problem of political parties claim they cannot find women, to put on the ballot, or there are no mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure gender parity in nominations. We have seen that under these coalition parties, they are doing this thing that is called zoning, okay? Now with this zoning, if Party A is strong here, it doesn't matter that you've all done your nominations and people are holding nomination certificates. People are being denied nominations because of zoning. Yet, it's acceptable because of the political expediency. Yet, it is not acceptable to favor women, to give women an opportunity. And in the limitation of rights in Article 24, it says that you can limit certain rights to achieve certain democratic ends. And the 2/3 is a democratic end. So, you can actually say that we are going to ensure that for this seat and this seat and this seat, where we are strong as a party, we're going to nominate women. That too is acceptable. So there are many mechanisms. So this whole idea is really, I go back to it, that things like, it's acceptable for us to do negotiated democracy because it's men sitting at the table, talking about men, how men are going to share power. But the minute you bring in the women equation, it's like, no, women, how do women come into this picture? And that's what we must change. We need to have a total attitude change as to how we view women in leadership, and especially leadership positions and governance positions. Because even when they do choose women, you will find they will never choose the strong women. They always look for those women who will not challenge them. So Marilyn will not be given a seat. They look for somebody else who will be a yes person to them. This is how it operates. So I agree that we do need to organize ourselves and not be shy. I wish all women we could now engineer a mass walkout from all these parties and say, we look for a fringe candidate and say, if you're going to give us half of cabinet and everything, we mobilize all women votes to you. Those are the kind of actions that we need to be thinking about now, because they've already proven to us political parties mean nothing, And so if we have leaders and politicians who do not value women, then women should deny them their votes. What are you going to vote for somebody who does not think that you're worth anything beyond taking your money and using it for whatever pleases them, except helping you participate and helping you get along? So I think that as women, we need to come back to ourselves and have a conversation with ourselves.
So already giving us solutions, and that's where we are headed, and part of it, organizing and movement building. And just going back to Professor Gitui, and for all the panelists, with an eye on the 2022 elections, we are here now. We already can tell the sort of aspirants that are going to emerge as our candidates post next week. We already can tell what the numbers are. What more needs to be done, not just in terms of limiting it to the church, but still with a cultural lens, especially to encourage young people, because we have seen voter apathy being more present amongst the young generations. So some solutions to the challenge that we are discussing today, what needs to happen before August and beyond.
Okay, thank you very much. But maybe before I get to that, I just want to emphasize on the aspect of awareness. Anytime we have an opportunity, now that I'm from the Department of Religious Studies, let's make every place where we are in a pulpit to talk about the issue of elections and our democratic right. Not just because we are women, but our democratic right because we'll make a difference by our vote. There's a lot of apathy, but I think we should still forge ahead because our vote and our awareness on what is going on is going to help us to make informed decisions. My friend here, Jerry, talked about the academy, but I just want to say also that we have a contribution to make in our curriculum. We know that every 4 years we need to revise our curriculum. I think we need to be deliberate on issues of gender, issues of women, and just being proactive, because it is us who have been given the opportunity to write the curriculum. And of course, in our teaching, I think we need to be deliberate on that as well. Earlier, the dean had asked whether our chair of COEASO was here. Young people, don't shy away from standing for elective position. Young women, I think the sky is the limit. Recently, a friend of mine who has tried Member of Parliament twice has not, I don't know what to say, has not won or has not succeeded. I think she succeeded by standing. And she was telling me, okay, I didn't get in. There were many, many obstacles, but she gained visibility. And nothing happens in her area, in her constituency, without somebody seeking her opinion. She's now an opinion leader because of the visibility. Then I also want to say that the place of the women reps. Again, there has been a debate not long ago that we really don't need that post. I think we are familiar with that. But I want to agree, my sister, with what you've just said, that in some communities that has gone to make a statement. And anytime we have an opportunity to make a statement, let us make it. I think for me, what I would say is let us be alert, let us be concerned about what is going on. Because of the many, many disappointments that we sometimes go through, somebody said we should not invest our emotions in issues political, but I want to say we should invest our interest. Emotion, is when probably you're going to be hurt by this and that, which probably could be unhealthy, but I think it is worth investing. And for the young people, there's a whole stretch of time. I know the bus of death stops sometimes when we are still young, but we want to work on hope that we have a long stretch ahead of us. I think the prospects are good. Yes, we've made great strides, and I think we should continue to ride on that and to do even much more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. So, Tunjeri, solutions and recommendations, again with an eye on the August elections. What do you recommend for the women in the room, young people in the room that are running for office in August? How do we make a difference and ensure that we have more numbers on the ballot? And Daisy, I will also come to you with that question.
Perhaps it's not a solution, but something that Daisy has said that I want to pick on is this walking out that Daisy talked about, protest. And I'm glad that Fida has an academy where you're training women. And it's one thing that I wish we had time that you could partner with Queer to teach women to protest, make a protest that has results, that has value. Because again, because of the way we are socialized, and the way most of us are educated from the Western norms, sometimes we waste inordinate efforts and resources in making protests that are futile. We must learn to make protests that first of all will speak to the heart of the people. If it's a cultural concept that we know that works, and I want to use an example that perhaps many of you cannot resonate with. You remember the Freedom Corner, the mothers of political prisoners? Remember what those women used, because they knew that would speak to their culture. The regime there was so rigid, but when they saw the women's nakedness, actually that's the day that the repressive regime fell, actually. So we have to teach the young women, the women we are sending out to seek votes, that if there's need for and there's ample need for protest, make a protest that's well rationalized and a process that's strategic and speaks to an intention. I think I needed to add that. And that's one of the things that we are teaching our students, because we should teach them to lobby, especially those of us who are doing gender and family law. I don't know if they say, and also as women, once you go there, and again, somebody here talked about weak women. I'm not quite sure they are weak women, Daisy, but systems can make us weak because they have a way of molding us into their form. Again, it's a socialization thing, and I'm glad that there are young people here who are training to learn to take the shape of water. And I know the shape of water is a LGBTQ thing, so I mean a lot of problems here. But there's some gems to pick from water. Water doesn't cede its space. Water occupies space. So if water is in a bottle, it doesn't stop being water. If water is coming to us in a tap, it still is water. And this is one thing that we must teach women, we must learn as women, that our essence should not be convoluted by the systems we are working in. If God has given me a loud voice, use that loud voice to transform those spaces. If you are given to silence or to a gentle nature, remember silence can at times be very subversive. So learn to use these gifts and these talents to shake systems, and you can. But once you try to conform to the system, once you try to speak, there's something, and please forgive me because I know this is now going against the grain. There's this thing that men tell us, you're the last man standing. What nonsense. Which woman is the last man standing? God made you with those female attributes so that you can bring those femininities into those and bring something that the men don't have. So it's not a compliment, it's an insult. So you need to affirm whatever you are, whether you're a man or woman, to use those attributes to get into those spaces and do that what you're there to do. water will never change, water will give life wherever it is. If it's in a bottle, if it's running in a tap, the 248th floor in New York, whether it's in Kiama River where I come from, it still is water and it gives life. Learn to occupy that space, don't cede it, don't let these political cultures, these corruptions, these briberies, say you won't bribe and you have a reason not to, and see how it works. I don't know if that's very utopian, but we are teaching our students to do the right thing, using some of these models and doing things that has an impact and that speaks the language of the heart.
Okay. That's very well articulated. Good clap. Final question to Daisy. Walk out, but walk to where? 86 political parties. Have we seen any that speaks our language? Is it too late to form one of our own with an eye on the elections? Where are we walking to? That's one. And two, because part of this conversation, again, especially looking at what we said about the week and the court decision yesterday, is not to create a very gloomy picture that makes us give up. So how do we motivate ourselves, and what next after the court suspension of the 2/3?
Well, first of all, before I answer, let me just tell Jerry that there are weak women. When I say weak women, I mean, you know, one of the things that we must recognize and appreciate is that any gains that we celebrate today as women's gains are there as a result of the deliberate organizing of women. It's not because of the state giving anything to women. It is women organizing around them. So anyone who is occupying a position of leadership and authority is doing so on the shoulders of women, and should do so ultimately for the benefit of women, so that we have better outcomes. Now, in 2013, we had the highest number ever of women in independent Kenya coming into leadership and decision-making positions. Yet somehow, we are still having the same conversation around 2/3 and implementation of laws beneficial to women. And you will find the root in that is that they ensure that they have women who will not challenge status quo. And that's what I mean by saying the weak women, because you can be in there and you can be quiet, but you are organized, and we organize. Because previously, even when we didn't have the legislation, we organized with women who were already in those positions, and we got so much. But they went there and they were negotiating for women. They were there, but somehow the ones who are here now are afraid to challenge status quo. And those then weaken our cause. Because imagine 10 years under a new administration that is supposed to animate the new constitution, we are talking about the 2/3 gender principle. And that, for me, is indicative of a failure of those women who have been in there in terms of being able to move the issue forward. But to respond to you, when I'm talking about a walkout is, so of course now they can't walk out of the parties. If you're on ballot and you walk out of party, you walk out of the election, okay? However, we have seen political parties don't mean anything. In terms of, there's no ideology that we are holding on to, that political parties are holding on to. The one ideology that informs every political party in Kenya is power by all means necessary, and we must adopt that approach. So if we're going to say that we want to see more women in leadership and decision-making table, one of the things that has happened during the primary process, the nomination process, is we actually do have an unprecedented number of women on the ballot. And so as women's rights organizations, we actually need to come together and map the country and find out where these women are. All the ones who are on ballot, whether they are on ballot with political parties, especially specifically for the dual gender seats, so that our aim is to flip the seats, to make sure that we get as many women in the dual gender seats, okay? So we mobilize around that. We mobilize votes for those women. So if we have women MPs in the 290 constituencies, we mobilize support for them. And already the message is coming out. There's no 6-piece voting. Now we vote for women. We say our party is women, our tribe is women, our ideology is women. And when those women go in, because we have supported women before, but we have never held them to account. So we must demand accountability. First order of business, you go into parliament, implement the 2/3 gender principle. This is what we want to see. Within 100 days, these are the laws that we want to see passed. Within 100 days, we want to see these policies. So we work with them so that they do what they need to do on the inside and we do what we need to do on the outside. We will continue, of course, with the court cases, but I think we need to take the battle out of the courts and we need to now organize as citizens. We need to organize to demand our rights. And I mean, I'm appealing not just to women, but even to the men out there. Because if it is okay for the women to not get their democratic rights, for sure, you can be certain that whatever it is that you value is up next, you know? So unless we organize very deliberately to ensure that those women who've gotten themselves onto the ballot, whether they are independent, if we don't have party women on dual gender seats, but we have an independent woman, we support them. And we mobilize our networks. We have a database. We host a database that has women's rights organizations in all the 47 counties. So we can do this. And that will be our message. Because remember, the one accusation that they've said is that women want free things, yet they are the majority and they don't vote for each other. So we need to debunk that. We need to be able to mobilize and vote for ourselves so that we make that statement. Once we do that, we'll have broken through, because that seems to be now the only frontier remaining. That's where we are now. It's now down to us. The ball is squarely in our court. Thank you.
Wow. Fantastic. A tribe, an ideology, and a party for women, with women, by women. Perhaps it's time for a women party manifesto for us to set up our aspirations and our expectations, and then hold those that we put into office accountable. I don't think there's a more powerful way to end the panel conversation other than with those few remarks. So allow me at this point to not finally thank my panelists, because we still have to take the questions from the panel, but you'll agree that they deserve a big clap, more than we have been able to. We've had about culture, academia. We've heard about the role of women organizing, and I know there are a number of questions and comments that will come from the floor, so we'll take those first before we can officially close the panel conversation. And for that set of the plenary conversation, I'm going to hand the mic back to Dr. Mariam to just take the questions from the plenary. Thank you very much, and keep those questions coming. Santeni.
Round of applause for Ms. Gaita. Wow. Are you as excited as I am? That was a very invigorating panel. Thank you very much, panel members, for your very, very wonderful ideas. I don't want to hog the mic, so without further ado, can we hear not only questions, but we can also hear some remarks. I know we have women. Okay, I already see the Fida Deputy Executive Director, and then a lady in a red jacket. Warren, can you please help me with the mic? We'll start with Ms. Kamanda at the front there.
Thank you, Dr. Mariam. Thank you, the panelists. It's been a very interesting discussion. I just wanted to draw all our attention to just two things. One, Daisy spoke of in terms of violence and how it inhibits, us achieving two thirds. And I think it's a critical discussion for us to have. And it also perhaps offers an opportunity for academia to work with women rights organizations. Article 33 of the Constitution is very clear on the limitations, for example, to the freedom of expression and speech. But there is a limitation that is not monitored. So we have, the first limitation is ethnic incitement on advocacy to hatred. The second limb of it, if you check our constitution, is this a limitation to freedom of expression, where the statement is an advocacy on hatred for any ground under Article 27.4. Very important for us because I know Daisy is working with female aspirants, Fida is also working with female aspirants, and a number of us organizations. And cyberbullying has become quite something for female candidates. And additionally, the spreading of flyers, which are basically advocacy for hatred. So the limit you have is that NCIC mandate, for some reason, whatever reason, and I think it's an error personally, their mandate is limited to advocacy for hatred based on ethnicity and religious grounds. So who is monitoring advocacy for hatred for all the other grounds, including gender? So I think that's quite, something that we really need to discuss as we head into the elections. We've seen quite a bit SGBV used as a weapon for war in subsequent elections. We have had a lot of litigation in court over SGBV in elections. So perhaps as we go into it, how is the state, implementing its obligation on prevention of sexual and gender-based violence towards elections? The second limb I think I'll speak on is the election dispute resolution for female candidates. I think quite important. We've had a history in the last election cycle of one of the female members of parliament in the 290 that we got. She's been in court for 5 years. Honorable Annie Kibe. Initially it was election dispute resolution, her decisions overturned at High Court, goes to Court of Appeal. There's just been litigation quite a bit. So as we go into this, as we do advocacy, as we do campaigns for female aspirants, we also need to all be alert on election dispute resolution. It comes with strict timelines, there are costs, there are strict procedures, so that kind of support. So just to mention as I see it is that on the two issues I've mentioned, Fida has deployed 100 sexual and gender-based violence monitors across the country. So it's something we're taking up. However, it should be a state obligation. It needs to be clear. Is it NPS that's doing the monitoring for gender kind of hatred? Who amongst the state actors is doing that? On EDR, we've trained, as our board member mentioned, we've trained 50 advocates who are working with the 350 women aspirants and our academy and also other female aspirants. So I think it's something that we really need to discuss even as we go into other modes of supporting female candidates.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Commander. The lady in the red jacket, and just to add that as she pointed out, when Daisy and some of our panelists spoke about nomination and how its role is to eliminate some of the obstacles, sexual violence is indeed one of those obstacles, and we're now seeing that the theater has moved from physical violence even to online violence, as she's saying. And as to regulation, IEBC also has a role, and in fact, it's a role that they have slept on, but ideally they should regulate the electoral code of conduct, for which incitement to violence violates that code. So it's part of the bodies that we should be working with. So we'll hear from the lady in red, and then there are two. I think there was a gent here, and then we'll come to you, madam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, panelists. It's really been excellent and wonderful and encouraging. The lady in red is called Dr. Kenya, or the incoming governor of Kiambu County. I am proudly nominated by my party, KANU, and right now, as Daisy emotionally pointed out and all our panelists, we have a problem of this zoning and selective application of the law. Because the zoning is being done to ensure that the popular party wins. But at the same time, they have an opportunity to ensure that they comply with the two-thirds gender rule within this zoning, or using the same aspiration they have in zoning. So we have a problem of lack of will in our political leaders, and right now I am facing such a challenge. Despite the fact that I have a nomination certificate, I am being subjected to a second nomination with the Jubilee nomination, the Jubilee as mayor partner, who is the incumbent, and it is almost abomination that I can win. Despite the fact that in comparison with all the other men who are in the ballot or all the other candidates, he is rated number 5. But I'm being like being pushed to sacrifice for him. So I think the protest Daisy is talking about should start here. And I'm ready to be is it called Adani? I want to be the sacrificial lamb for this protest. The second person I would like to be the protest candidate is Martha Karua. We need to protest and say, no Martha, no Azimio. We need to protest and say, no Dr. Juliet, no Azimio in Jammu. Because honestly, there is outright discrimination. I want to thank Fida because I'm a member of the academy, and of course Daisy has worked with me from when we went in 2011 to seek the advisory. And I'm here because of the warmth that has been there from the women rights, and it has really been a beautiful space. It is a space that has attracted very, very many of us, and therefore we need to be encouraged that we have a small window between now and August to ensure that we vote winning. I like what Daisy has proposed, because now it's no longer about the 6 piece. We can raise all platforms, we can mobilize and ensure that people vote for women. We can achieve this not more than 2/3 rule, and I pray that all of us will live here with strategies to reaching out the women at community level. Because it's no longer the suit, it is no longer the party, it is about the individual, and we can make the individual women. So to me, this has been very, very encouraging, and I thank God.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kenya. Thank you so much. And we wish, please give the mic to the lady in front of you. I think, yes. We wish you so much luck. When you mentioned about your challenges, I was going to promptly introduce you to Wanjiro and Daisy, but it seems you're already well acquainted with them, and I'm sure they will help you. And we can indeed do a 6-piece, but our 6-piece can be for Team Mama. Our chairman is Mama, so indeed you can vote for a 6-piece suit, just ensuring that each of those leaders is a woman. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself first.
My name is Comfort Monoru Mwangi for Senate for the Muranga County. On a current ticket, I've nominated together with Governor Kimembe, and we're making things moving. What I have to say is that ladies, and those gentlemen who support ladies, we're in a very abusive relationship. We've been abused like for 12 years. You mentioned going to court. We're in the Constitution, the 2/3 issue, in the Constitution. And these men, or these people, the elite, really are abusing us. We talked about weak women. This is emotional abuse. You don't know what's happening to them when they get there. They go in strong, they're weakened. They're being abused on a daily basis. But Madam Daisy, I'm done. Thank you very much. You are on track. You have organizations here like Fida. You've been advising women on abuse. We should be able to recognize the situation we're in as women in Kenya. And one of the things you do when you realize you're abused, it takes a lot of rationalizing, like maybe it's this, let's try that. You walk out. You walk out. And you're gonna walk out. And before you walk out, you have a plan. And when you have a plan, the next step is you tell your friends and family that you're about to leave. Who are we going to tell? We are going to tell the world. We are the country that had a second election, Iran. We had a man who was 84 go back to school. We are Kenya. And now in a world of social media, where the world is one globe, if we tell our friends and family our plan is to only vote for women this time, it can happen. It will be the headlines all over the world that we have said, Kenya says, this time we're voting women. We're going radical. We're going raw. We're going raw. We're going really, really raw. Okay? So we are going to say, we'll tell the world, come tomorrow. said they're only voting women. And they're going to vote for those women with their children. This youth, you're saying, are not making up their minds. We cook for them. They come home. We can talk to them. We can turn around this country like today. We've gone through this zoning and all this mess. We had a court case just 2 days ago. I mean, guys, we're being abused. We need to wake up. We need to walk out. We need to tell the world our plan and follow it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the incoming Senator of Murang'a County. Thank you very much. Please go ahead, sir.
You'll allow me to come down there, saying they are good photographers for the purposes of pictures. Well, my name is Benny Walubengo. I'm a student at Daystar University, studying international relations and political science. I run an organization, and 2 weeks ago we did an event of 1,000 people. And the girls who were there were 700, the boys who were there were 300. And as I entered into this hall, I looked at the number of empty seats, and I looked at the age group that is here, and I asked myself a question: who is pushing this conversation? Because as we are talking about votes, the main emphasis should not be the people who are running for office, it should be the people who will vote. And I've seen so many girls who are here, they are mostly lawyers, alpha females, packaged very well and very smart. And I've asked myself, the people in this room are people who will be the next attorney generals and lawyers. When will they have time to demonstrate? The women who are supposed to vote right now are selling bananas somewhere, and they don't know even about this conversation. So when we talk about who we want to run, these are the people who are supposed to be in this hall, but they're not here. So how did we even package maybe content so that we can attract them? So the first question is, how are you guys planning to package this content in order to attract these people? Because they are the people who are voting. Number two, a wounded soldier cannot be able to fight. Most of the intellectual women in this country, I was doing a research 3 days ago with my team, we realized that 60% of the intellectual women in the corporate world are wounded. Some of them coming from broken marriages, some of them were raised in very tough homes, so wounded soldiers are not fit to fight. So what is your plan to help these people heal? Because some of these female politicians, even when you talk to them one-on-one, they suffer from so many pains coming from marriages and family issues. So how will they focus on dealing with their wounds, dealing with the families, and also at the same time pushing this agenda? And so the agenda should not be giving them position. The agenda should be how will these people heal so that they can fight. Because we are focusing so much on giving women intellectual power, empowering them, but we're not focusing also on their hearts and them healing so that they can be able to pass this information to a generation. Number three, the 844 system never taught us revolutionary politics. Personally, I've learned in 7 high schools. I was suspended and expelled because of incitement. Because they say, this boy is an inciter. Now, my question is, a girl cannot be 24 years old or 26. Then you start coming and tell her to protest. She was not taught how to protest. She was taught law, she was taught banking. So how many women can leave from their jobs and come to protest in the streets for 2 hours? She's on a salary of 250,000. The things are going on well, children are going for vacation, the family is going on well. So how does politics and governance affect her? So we think we need to package this conversation from behind and also take it also into our curriculum so that the understanding can be from the roots. The last statement, I think we are empowering girls, and the reason as to why men in this generation don't have the capacity to handle alpha females, it's because we focus on empowering the woman and we never taught the man on how to handle the empowered woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see my dean wanting to respond.
No, I don't want to respond. I wanted to ask Dr. K, is there any aspirants who is standing as an independent? We also would like to hear your experiences.
As you're waiting to hear, I like that every time we have a scenario like this, we have an auditorium like this, that we're careful not to perpetuate stereotypes. So for instance, when it comes to women leaders, it's only when it comes to women leaders that we start asking deep questions, including on mental health. But this is not a standard that we have for male leaders. So let's also be careful not to perpetuate stereotypes. And in fact, if you're looking for accurate statistics on mental health, men are indeed the endangered species, because women tend to have social spaces, they have people they talk to. If you look even at suicide numbers, they really are more among males. So let's also not be careful not to spread misinformation as we're doing so, and to refer to women as women and not girls. Are there any aspirants, any other women leaders? Okay, yes, there's one there at the back. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jedida Wairu Kiplenge. I'm running for the seat of Nakuru Town West MP. My political vehicle is Kanu. Madam Governor here and Madam Senator here, we are in the same party. We've been given nomination certificates already, but we are having a lot of challenges. I'll echo their sentiments that when men go sit on those negotiation tables, they cannot talk for us. They do not know the issues of women. So we must have women leaders to go and sit there and negotiate for women issues. As I was listening to the panelists here, something popped into my mind, and I wondered, why is it that we don't have a party, a women party led by women? Why don't we have one, actually? That should be our vehicle, all of us as women. Yeah? Another thing is the gender role, I think, has been misunderstood. Everybody thinks that the gender role is about women. We need to educate the masses and tell them the gender role is not about women, it is about both genders. That is also another thing I've come to realize, that we don't educate our people on this. The person on the ground does not understand that the gender role does not actually, it's not actually for the woman, it is for both genders. I also agree that we should protest. We should go out of court now. The time is right for women to go out there and protest. And actually, I was thinking maybe the best way to pass this law is through the ballot. Let us vote as many women as possible. So then, they can go out there and represent us in numbers. I think that is also another way of passing the gender rule through the ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, MP Jedida. Thank you very much. Is there any other woman leader, or is there, we can also hear now from representatives from civil society. Wangeshi, I see you there. Will you say hello to us? Wangeshi from CREW, and then any other organization that is represented here, and then I will come back to my panel in case there's any final word.
I hope you can hear me. I think for me, I'm just asking myself, we have been in courts, the numbers that have been there, they're very many, and I'm happy that we have also been able to document this, so that if anybody ever asks what was the story of women trying to move from two parts, there's a publication. I'm happy that we've been able to do this. I'm also happy we don't have also been able to put this together, just looking to get it out to print and to publish. I think we must be able to encourage, so that when these stories are told, there's somebody we can always be able to remember that the women, as they did the court work, as they gathered and as they mobilized, that is something that they can be able to take forward. Moving from court, I think for me that's the next stage. And previously we have actually advocated that President ni mama, Governor ni mama, Vice President ni mama, Senator ni mama, you know, Member of Parliament ni mama, you know, mama ni kiongozi. So, as you're going to the next election, and I believe everybody in this room, because above 18, everyone I see in this room, has a voters
verified, registered and verified.
Yes, yeah, and you can remember, the number is 70,000 for you to be able to verify your that should be registered. Please do, because if you're in this room and you have not registered, I think that's for us to say that you're going for an election. But as you're going to the election, for me, just to encourage that the protest that we have, Kiongozi, Mama. Everywhere you see with Mama, just tick, 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 that's our next 6 piece and moving forward. Because if we don't do that, as we complete the election, then again we start talking about that. We have even done the cost analysis. It is only 57 shillings per year. Have individual Kenyans who are able to pay tax to include women into the leadership. Even with the card of 57, what else can we do? My appeal to you as we go to the election, just vote for women. Everywhere you say just take, done. And then we can have a conversation because the women then will drive. If the women are taking care of our homes, if they're taking care of our schools, if they're taking care of our food, if they're taking care of our, as we go home, we are looking for Mama Mboka because all of us eat. If they're driving all that, why can they be in positions of budget making? Because what are these budgets about? They're about our livelihood, it's about our education, it's about our roads, it's about our transport, and therefore the women qualify to do all these things. For me, that's my only appeal to you as you go to election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wangeshi is the Executive Director at CRU, and we celebrate you for being in the trenches for very, very many years. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
My name is Dr. Wanjiro Kibe. I am a financial and business consultant. I was running for MP Langata, Jubilee ticket, but unfortunately I was zoned out. So when it comes to women in politics, women, you don't have to apologize to appoint a deputy as a woman, when you're a woman. We have president and vice president, male. Why are you apologizing? We have people who are a whole 6 piece. They are men. And when you want to choose a woman, you want to look for a reason. You don't need a reason. Just appoint a woman, you know? You don't have to. And now that we've already closed the register, I think what we can do as women is also lobby for nomination. You know, nominated MP, the senators, whatever position that someone can be nominated, the Fida, I had the training aspirants, that should have gone out for many aspirants to then join the training. Next time, let's market ourselves better. But now we can still mobilize for women to be nominated. And the women that mobilize to be nominated, then we give them a work plan, a performance contract. And when they go in there, we have the people who are very knowledgeable with law, and then they can tell us which bills, and then we move the bills. We need to join hands. Women, please, unless we use the ballot, we cannot achieve the 130. They are out to keep us out of decision making of any board. If you go to the boards, forget about even political, in the company boards, well, we don't have women. You're one woman in the board. And when another one is coming, they say, when are you going to go out to be replaced? 1 out of 10 people, 1 out of 8. And that is where the decisions are made in the companies. So let us push women across the board, not only in the political field, but even in the board of directors. When you have to appoint someone decision making, please remember that sharp classmate of yours who is a woman. Even in the church PPC, how many of them are women? In churches, where we feel the pains, how many of us are there? You find the chair of the PPC is a man, the assistant is a man, the secretary is a man. Why? Can we change our attitude? Can we start appreciating our sisters? Yes, please, that is my prayer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kibe. Indeed, you echo something that Professor Bitui herself said, that we need to normalize the not more than 2/3 decision such that it's a conversation in our everyday spaces. I'm being told that our refreshments are ready, and I see that we're running beyond time. Are you Florence? Okay, so we have you, and then Florence, Jerry, and then we can come to a close.
Okay, my name is Diladi Sujoki. I am a political science finalist student here, and also the Deputy Secretary General of the Council. So, about the role of the church, academia, and I can see we have several men here, and he's one of them who spoke, and I mean, there are stereotypes that men still have, so I would like the panelists to tell the men who at least have shown up and showed interest in this topic, what exactly is their role in this conversation, and what role can they play to make this, make this country a better space for women. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll address the question. Let's first hear from our Queer Student Body President, Ms. Florence Njeri.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Florence Njeri, the student body president here. I can actually tell you that women really are the card. Here in Catholic University, out of the executive 7 members, 4 of them are ladies. See, right now for them. So I think where we are behind women and we're supporting them. As we go outside there, let us not forget we support Kurania Mama. So yes, thank you for this opportunity. We've really learned a lot. And we appreciate the opportunity to also learn about what is the truth and the gender. And we really appreciate for that. Thank you for sharing this to take place. Asante sana.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much. And now we'll come back to my panel. I will begin with Ms. Daisy. If you can address Gladys's question, and then any other of my panelists.
Thank you. To the question about what role do men play the same role that women play in supporting the women's agenda, but above all else is to not perpetuate the stereotypes that are out there concerning women, and not to raise the boy-child issue, because we have a lot of men who come and support women, but they say, but now the boy-child is lagging behind. The boy-child, the threat to the boy-child is not because the girl-child is empowered. Because even as we talk about empowerment of women and girls, we still are so far behind. We are talking about boards at the corporate level. Excuse me. Women are still not there. We do not have situations of boy-child being married early. We do not have boy-child suffering teenage pregnancies and having to make a choice, about your future, So there's still so many issues that are affecting women and girls that have to be addressed without men and boys raising the issue of boy-child. There are challenges, for sure, but it's not because of the empowerment of the women. The other thing is that we want our men not to feel threatened by empowered women or even by championing the women's agenda. Because the women's agenda is not about role reversal, and it's important to state that because it is viewed as role reversal, where the women are coming to take over men's spaces and shutting the men out. What we are advocating for is shared roles. We want to share that space, okay? So it's important that the men understand the women's agenda and understand what it is that we're advocating for and become advocates for the agenda for women so that we have he for she who is not threatened or feeling emasculated because they are championing the agenda for women. Because you never know, tomorrow you may be the father of a girl, your daughter, and you would want the very, very best for her. And so, as you champion the women's agenda, we are championing it also for the future generations that are coming. Because what use is it for us to have all these educated girls here, but when they come out into the real world, they meet with the iron fence that is that obdurate stance by the male political class that's misogynistic and patriarchal and completely refuses to give way to women at certain levels. It is unfair, So it's also important to understand that it's about justice and fairness, you know. Men cannot claim superior rights over women simply because of a lottery of birth. Men did not choose to be born as men, neither did women to choose to be born as women. And so we need to create an equal society where everybody has equal right and equal opportunity and is not discriminated against simply because of their sex. So it's important to understand that and lend your voice to that agenda and also internalize it. Because for as long as you refuse to internalize it, you become the future perpetrators of that same exclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, great. I want to simplify something Daisy has said. There's something that I usually share with my class because this is something that we hear frequently in terms of why exactly, you know, when we empower the woman, you know, then there's a question of the boy child. So it almost seems as if in empowering the woman or in having affirmative action measures, we are giving an advantage to the woman, but that is actually not the case. What we are doing is that we are withdrawing a disadvantage. We are withdrawing an obstacle. We are leveling the playing field. In a very pedestrian sense, you can think of it as a race. If you have a race between Juma and Maria, you can think of most men as Juma, he's just unburdened. He's just waiting like this for the race to begin. And Maria, on the other hand, has a baby on her back. She has another baby she's holding the hand. She has firewood. You know, so if we had to have a race between Juma and Maria, who will win the race? Who will win? Juma, right. So what we are doing with affirmative action measures is we are saying to Maria, allow me to hold your baby. Allow me to take this other baby to daycare. Allow me to give you a gas cooker so that you don't go to fetch firewood, so that you can also be jogging there at the starting line, right? So we are not bestowing an advantage. We are actually recognizing that there's a historical disadvantage. There's a historical exclusion. And how can we unburden these women so that they can compete? It's not that they cannot compete. It's that they are too burdened to compete. So in having affirmative action measures, in saying we need to have special seats, for instance, it's not an advantage. So when we unburden Maria, do we threaten Juma's position? Does that disadvantage Juma in any way? Right, so we're not doing anything to Juma's position, but we are simply alleviating the condition of this person that's disadvantaged. And just to finish by saying that when we talk about women, let's think of women in all their beautiful colors, women with disabilities, young women, old women, rural women, marginalized women, women of sexual minorities. So let's have a very wide scope when we think about women, such that even when we're fighting for women's spaces, we're again careful not to reflect the exclusions that have been for a long time. So without much further ado, we'd want to just thank you very much. I would want to invite Ms. Gaita to kind of sum up for us and tell us where next. You asked Ms. Daisy, where are we walking out to? And so I will pose the same question to you, where to next? And then after that, Ms. Mathangani, be on standby to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mariam. A big clap for her. She has moderated that session very well. So in a nutshell, what are we saying? Kiongozi ni? Na mama ni? Fantastic. So, and that's how we wind this up, that this was not just a conversation. It's not meant to stop here, because what we are also trying to see is how do we support the women that are already on the ballot? How do we support and create a critical mass of voters that will have reason to vote in women? How do we sensitize the public to realize that women can lead, they should lead, and they're actually leading, and we are seeing it from here. But how do we make sure that these women, that are courageous enough to get their names on the ballot, we then are listening to them, are creating an enabling environment for them, and we are seeing them. So I think a couple of things have come out of this conversation. One is that we are agreeing as institutions that are supporting this fora to develop a database of all the women aspirants stroke candidates, they will soon be candidates, and provide support. And you've already had the sort of support that Fida is supporting. Sylvia talked about the support that Mzalendo is providing, and Crown Trust and all, and CREW, and all the other partners, the women rights organizations. We'll walk this journey with you until and beyond 10th August, because we recognize that beyond the election, there's going to be a lot of support that will be required. The second thing is, of course, that in this regard, I think the call to action from this is that outside the legal and constitutional requirements, we are also calling on political parties, we are also calling on candidates, party leaders, and to create an enabling environment, but also to lead from the front by electing or choosing, at this point it's choosing, running mates of the opposite gender. And in this regard, when I say running mates of the opposite gender, it also applies to you, Dr. Kimemia. When you get the governor ticket, feel free to offer the running mate ticket to a man, so that it's not seen as if we are only creating running mate positions for the men. We are saying that, for the women, sorry. We are saying that women can be the leading candidates, and we can have women as running mates as well. So I think at executive level, at national level, at county level, let's advocate for 2/3, if we may, at that level. The next thing we're also talking about, I think that has come out from this forum, is I think there is an agreement on the need for a multi-sectoral approach. So the church, the academia, the women rights organizations, and media. I know we didn't have a media partner on the panel, but we recognize the very important role that media plays. We know a lot of the stereotypes that have been perpetuated. We know media has been identified as a barrier to women participation. We know that we have raised issues around the skewed coverage of women politicians, and when they eventually get it, we know it's not always favorable. So sometimes it's not coverage at all costs, but to ensure that women get favorable coverage. So it's for the organizations to work together to advocate for the women's agenda. The third commitment is to continue holding duty bearers accountable, especially around the election-related violence. Fida has spoken about the gender-based violence, and also extending this to the emerging digital threats that we are seeing, the cybersecurity. So we would want that the relevant organizations create, again, an enabling environment by making sure that women are not shying away from these positions because of the cyberbullying and the digital insecurity that they are facing. Finally, I think generally is a commitment to supporting the candidates, stroke aspirants, and this extends also to the dispute resolution mechanisms, I think coming from Fida. And for us at Mzalendo Trust is to continue showcasing the work that women are doing, and any other support in terms of enhancing the capacity. I think finally is a call to the public just to make sure that we vote in women and recognize that women can, and in all our different spaces to then keep that call very loud and very active. And so just saying that women can, or voter dada, or kiongozi ni mama, or mama ni kiongozi, whichever way you want to interchange it. So basically that's how we'll take the conversation forward. We'll keep this conversation forward. We'll keep tracking the decisions that come out of the political processes that we are anticipating now, including the court. We'll keep monitoring that. It can no longer be business as usual. I think that's a bigger call. We can no longer stay in an abusive relationship. We must know what options are available, and we must take them. I think that's a rallying call from this meeting. And because these are the last remarks, allow me to also take the opportunity to give a vote of thanks. First is to thank the Catholic University for giving us this opportunity to engage, hosting us in this very beautiful hall, and also accepting to be on our panel. Very insightful conversations. A big clap for the Catholic University. Allow me to also thank Fida, Shiro, and the team, and Elizabeth, and everybody else. You may not know it, but this meeting has been put together in 2 days. You know, as of Monday, we had a conversation, and we knew this might happen, but everything took impetus on Tuesday. And so within 2 days, with the assistance of Fida and the Mzalendo team, we've been able to pull this off. Thank you for the support, and thank you for continuing to support the women in their endeavor to hold office. The third team that I want to thank is my Mzalendo staff, and they are all here. Not all of them, but most of them are here. So Sylvia, Lois, Jeff, Adisa, and Aida, is to again thank them. 2 days, it's been 2 days of a lot of work, but we've been able to pull this off. So thank you very much. Allow me also to again very warmly thank our panelists, Jerry Kangede, Professor Getui, and Daisy Amdani. Excellent insights, right? Yeah, informative, insightful. So a big clap for them. Oh, and you didn't clap for my Mzalendo team. And Fida, big clap for them. And then finally, it's to all of you. Again, the 2 days extend to you, and to see such diverse and rich representation, we are very grateful. We also know the time. Afternoon meetings are not always the best, you know, in terms of mobilizing people from their morning activities, but that you're here and you have engaged with us throughout the session, we are really grateful. Lois, I'm not sure if we have representation from the media. Yes, we do, and we are grateful. The media, you continue to be a key partner of ours. Please continue creating and amplifying the women's voices. For us to get the realization of the 2/3, we require you and we need you as a key partner, and we are very happy to continue engaging. So with those few remarks, I would want to bring this to a close. Dr. Mariam has indicated. All right, I might have jumped the gun on an activity, so I'll call Mombi to just give the final words, as we normally say in, in our documentation. But allow me to then close my session by putting it this way. Do we have a choir declaration? Yes. Are we saying Kiongozi ni mama? Yes. Are we saying Vota dada? Yes. Are we saying women can? Do we commit to voting women on 9th August? Yes. All right. As we have said, we'll hold other people accountable. We will come back to this hall after the elections to take stock and ask ourselves whether we delivered. So with those few remarks, Mombi, back to you.
Sorry, can the declaration be documented? Now I'm wearing my lawyer cap. It's so important that we commit ourselves to it, even as we commit to work with these people. And I think we are representative, a team that's represented.
Yes.
You guys.
We'll be issuing a statement. I think there's a statement, there's a draft statement already. Yes.
The declaration.
And the end of the abuse. Tumechoka. Sawa, we are working away.
And one thing, Carol, that you must include is incumbency. We must work with these women that when they get in those positions, they hold them for a bid.
Yes, and we did say that we hold them accountable. So I think the comms team, you've heard all the things that we need to include in that statement. Allow me now to invite Mumbi to just give the final vote of thanks and tell us where to find those refreshments. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline Gita, for doing my work. I don't have much to say. She's already thanked everybody. But I just want to really just thank the students and wear my lecturer hat and say that the world is ruled by people who stayed until the end of the meeting. So the guys who are here, the students who showed up and stayed to the end will be the rulers of this world. Please take that lesson with you. Yeah? Very important. I'll only be 2 minutes, really. We are very excited by our guests. They've warmed Catholic University. They've actually demonstrated to us that we can have this meeting. And what's very exciting is that I learned in the process of organizing for this meeting, as we say in my tribe, trying is success. So we just tried. We were talking with Dr. Kagede, with the dean, and we just said, let's just go and ask him. And he said yes, and in less than 2 days, we put this meeting together. And I think that is something we all need to congratulate ourselves for. Fida Mzalendo. I have never worked with such amazing partners. It was all about, we shall make this happen. It's the beginning. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it is a dialogue that is important and that we must have in a timely way. We don't have an academic dialogue, like now after the nominations. Maybe we'll have others, but we wanted to be timely. So we pushed ourselves to the end, and we finally have had this dialogue. So I just want to acknowledge our partners. They've been amazing, gone out of their way to make concessions and do things almost in an irregular way, but accountable way. There's a difference. Accountable way. So we're very, very grateful. And then also I want to thank some specific people who've done some amazing work. Professor Matata has been mobilizing the students. He's back there, always a silent helper, the silent support. Never support the men who, and never undermine the men who actually really, really make things happen for you. So we're very, very grateful. And of course, we want to thank our Vice Chancellor. We don't take it for granted. Catholic University, as conservative a Christian institution as it is also progressive because it is able to have such a dialogue. It's able to accommodate this. And this is thanks to the leadership and I guess social justice ethos that the university has. And we are very, very glad for that. I hope I've really thanked everybody else who has not been thanked, but I think it's been an amazing panel. We shall continue to do so, and I want you to tell your other students, maybe we should tell our guests that we are not fully in school, so it's a bit hard to mobilize when that's the case, because students are just reporting, getting their bursaries, what have you, but I want to encourage our students here. Please let your other fellow students know that these meetings are what will make or break you in life. If you're just the academic, you don't bother going to meetings, you don't socialize, you don't get to know, all opportunities are found here. Some of you will interact with our guests, you'll find an opportunity. That's how many of us actually made those opportunities. So make sure you start early to get engaged, to be involved, to challenge yourself out of your comfort zone and even talk, approach, do something even if you're not sure what the outcome will be, but move forward. Thank you very much. Well, a very important part of business today is our refreshments are outside. We have packs for the students. We have packs for the students because, of course, of COVID, we are still cautious, but at least we have that. So students, you can even take 2 packs since many of you left early, but there are refreshments for you. For the guests, the same thing. We have different refreshments, not as nice as the students, but definitely they'll also be available. Okay, so who's going to pray for us? Moi? Okay. Okay, so shall we pray for what we're about to eat? Okay, let's bow our heads. Okay, dear Lord God, we come before you with thanksgiving and with hope that indeed, Father, you've heard us and you've heard the clarion call that women have made today. Lord, we know you are able, and that, Father, you'll be with us even as we seek for justice in this country, as we seek for leadership, especially elected leadership, that is accountable, that has integrity, that does not have impunity. Father, we know that you're hearing us, and we know, Father, that you shall hold every single person accountable at the end of the day. on how they serve others and how they uphold, especially the lowly in our world. Father, we thank you that we've had this chance to just gather our minds together, our brains together, and come up with a way forward. And Father, we pray that you continue to be with us even as we implement it. We thank you, Lord, and we thank you even for the refreshments you've provided for us. We don't take it for granted. We pray for journey mercies for all those who are living here. Lord, we just want to bless you and say that indeed you are God, and that you are that we belong to your kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. It's officially closed. I think now we can go ahead and have our refreshments and interact, talk to whoever you wish to talk to. Our guests are here. They're very open. And, let's enjoy ourselves.